The armed forces making absolutely clear that anybody who has an FIR against his name or is involved in any form of rioting and arson in these Agnipath protests stands no chance of recruitment into the armed forces. This seems to have shaken and woken some of the protesters up. Protests today subdued but not completely gone. What happens from here? Has the message gone through deep enough, or are these protests likely to continue? Joining me on the Newstrack, we've got with us representing the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, its Member of Parliament in the Rajya Sabha, Professor Rakesh Sinha. Squaring off against him from the Congress, a former Air Force pilot, Uttam Kumar Reddy, MP of the Congress Party. For a military perspective, we've got Lieutenant General RK Sawhney, former Deputy Chief of the Army Staff. Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia joins us, former Director General Military Operations. I want to go across to General Bhatia first on this very clear message going that if you're involved in arson and rioting, you will not be allowed to enroll for a position in the armed forces. Do you think that will help quell the protests, or do you think that there is a lot of confusion and concerns and therefore this stern message alone would not be enough to calm things down?
Rahul, if I understood the question correctly, firstly, there is no question of condoning the violence. It is not acceptable to anyone. It has to be condemned in all its aspects. There cannot be violence, and the violence is totally wrong, especially if you are aspiring to join the armed forces. As per the rules and regulations of recruiting, every aspirant candidate for recruitment has to get a police verification certificate of the character. So that nothing has changed. And if the police doesn't verify him, he is not accepted for recruitment. So it is, I think, in the interest of the youth not to indulge in violence. As far as other aspects are concerned, I do not have the inputs what is going on. I have just watched it on television. I'm not the expert on that. But I can talk about the Agnipath scheme. I can talk about the good, bad and ugly of the Agnipath scheme, as also the aspirations of the youth to join the armed forces, which I've seen. And they prepare for 2 to 3 years to join the armed forces, which is a matter of pride for them. It's a question of for some, it's a question of life and death, because they see 10 to 15 to 20 rallies. They were everywhere to get recruited, and they are really passionate about it. They really want to join the armed forces. And certainly, when you change the scheme, I think the youth have a reason to feel dejected, not to take to violence. I'm not saying that dejected. It would be, I think this would be similar in case tomorrow, if all of a sudden you were to change the rules for joining IIT and JEE and say, okay, you will not have the exam, people who are preparing for 2 to 3 years in, let's say, the quota factory, as we call it. You change that, there would be similar results. So we have to look at the aspirations of the people. Every Agnipath scheme should have been given a little time to sink in. I get calls from my old colleagues, old soldiers, veterans, कि साहब हमारे बच्चों का क्या होगा? Because for them it's a tradition to join the army, not only army, the same unit, the same regiment, and they are now worried as to how that will happen. Earlier they used to get priority for recruitment in the regimental centers. Will they get it or not? They're not sure. And for them it was a career. So this is not going to happen anymore with the Agnipath scheme. So they are a worried lot.
Okay.